Green Bay Packer fans are not used to this feeling. They're not used to having doubt in their offense while Aaron Rodgers is on the field. They're not used to seeing a complete and utter lack of cohesiveness in the second halves of games, despite having a quarterback that, for the most part, has always been able to pull through in the clutch. This is a whole new world for them, and interestingly enough, they don't know who to blame for being stuck in this miserable, unforgiving place. After reviewing the tape for myself, I suppose it would be easy to give a simple answer and point fingers at Mike McCarthy's play calling, or the offensive line for not being able to pass protect, or the young receivers for dropping potentially huge passes down the field, or even blaming Aaron Rodgers for not playing like the Aaron Rodgers that we're used to seeing. But in reality, the answer is not that simple, and truth be told, the problem is not just one of those things, it's all of them. Every single aspect of this Packer offense has underperformed, even their future Hall of Fame quarterback, and unfortunately for them, the well-oiled machine that is the New England Patriots were the perfect opponent to contrast with Green Bay's discombobulation. When you look at how the Patriots operate on offense, they've always stuck to one defining principle that no matter who was actually on the team or who was calling the plays, it's always been their most important goal every single week: make things easy. If you need to put a running back out wide to draw a slower linebacker in coverage where you can then win with an easy pitch and catch, do that. If your primary big back for the game is a converted wide receiver and return man, and you feel like the only way he will have success is to run him behind a fullback so that his reads at the line of scrimmage are easier, do that. And of course, if you know that the defense that you're facing has a lot of young defensive backs who can be taken advantage of by tricking their inexperienced eyes into looking at the wrong thing, exploit that. The Patriots' game plan against Green Bay was not just modern in the sense that they used a lot of motions and spread formations and bells and whistles in the run game to get production, it was modern in that it was all cohesive. Every play call had a purpose and an idea behind it that made sense within the game plan. They didn't just march Tom Brady out onto the field and say, okay, go make some insane throws and win the game for us. They helped him with a game plan. They adjusted when things didn't work, and they schemed their weapons to be wide open in as many clever ways as they could. It was about as vintage a Josh McDaniels performance as you will ever see. And trust me, you can say whatever you want about McDaniels as a person, and I know a lot of people will, but that dude can flat out coach, and this game proved it for sure. Meanwhile, when you look at Green Bay's offense in this game, it was almost the exact opposite approach. Nothing was working together in any sort of cohesive manner to make things easy, and in fact, a lot of the time, the offense seemed as though it was making things harder on Rodgers. Hell, even Rodgers himself is guilty of making things harder than they need to be, and in a way, I almost felt like even he did not trust his own offense to help him out, so he tried to do it all alone. There were 6 distinct problems that I noticed on tape from this game, all with varying degrees of severity, and I'll lay them out here. Number 1, there was Mike McCarthy being needlessly over-aggressive and at times downright situationally unaware in his play calling, and in a similar vein, Aaron Rodgers was also being equally over-aggressive in his adjustments at the line of scrimmage. As an extension of that, there were problems with Green Bay's young receiving corps dropping balls or not adjusting their routes properly on those deep shots and tight window throws. That then led to problem number 3, which was Rodgers losing trust in those young receivers and suddenly not being aggressive enough at times when he should have been aggressive, simply because he did not have enough confidence to attempt throws that honestly he gladly would have attempted in years past. And speaking of those attempts, Rodgers is not without blame on some of those passes that he did attempt, by the way, because he was noticeably off on ball placement compared to his usual self, and there were several passes throughout the night that lacked that trademark Aaron Rodgers precision that we've come to know and fear. And finally, you had 2 more problems that were also related, which were the offensive line not being able to consistently protect Rodgers on those long developing shots downfield, and Mike McCarthy's game plan not being designed in a way to help blunt that pressure by exploiting formation, motion, or establishing a run game. That is understandably a lot of issues to absorb all at once, so how about we channel our inner Bill Belichick and just make this easier by going through these one by one. First things first, Mike McCarthy's over-aggression in play calling and his tendency to, in my opinion, outsmart himself. For whatever reason, and this has been a theme all year now, the Packers just flat out refuse to run the ball. They are 2nd in the league in average yards per carry and 5th in rushing DVOA per Football Outsiders, which is one of the few metrics you can actually trust, by the way, and yet Green Bay still only ranks 29th in the league in total rushing attempts. This team is great at running the rock, they just straight up refuse to do so. Aaron Jones was averaging 5.4 yards per carry in this game, and even Jamal Williams' slow ass was averaging 4.9, and yet on a critical 3rd and 1 late in the second quarter, when the Packers were mounting a drive to get some points before halftime, what did McCarthy call? A QB keeper out the back door with a quarterback that still had a bum knee. Rodgers lost 2 yards, the drive was over, and instead of potentially going into the locker room either tied or only down by 4 points, they were down 17-10. That is a huge potential point swing. How about earlier in that same quarter when the Packers got down to the 2-yard line after a 10-yard run from Jones? They had a 1st and goal from the 2, and did they run it once? No, they threw 3 straight passes. The first was a check with me on a fade to Jimmy Graham while he was isolated one-on-one. The second was a play-action pass also designed for Graham in the corner, which was immediately snuffed out. And finally, on the 3rd passing play called, Rodgers did manage to find Davante Adams in the end zone while rolling out to buy himself some time and make a great throw off platform into traffic. And I know what you're thinking, well, Brett, they did score, so what's the problem? My problem with it is that they don't need to make it so damn hard on themselves. They can just run the ball. They don't have to force their quarterback to roll out into space and throw at crazy arm angles into traffic to score touchdowns. It's not necessary, but they insist on doing it the hard way anyway, just because they have a quarterback that can make it work most of the time. Green Bay ran on 7 out of 10 plays to march almost 80 yards down the field and then just stopped running once they were knocking on the door, as if running the football was suddenly no longer an option. Meanwhile, on the ensuing possession from the Patriots, they also ran the ball on 6 out of 7 plays to go nearly 70 yards themselves, and when they got inside the red zone, they didn't stop. They kept running it, including 4 straight runs from Cordarrelle Patterson of all people, to cap off the drive and get a 5-yard touchdown. The run game was working just as well for them as it was for Green Bay, so they made it easier on themselves and just kept doing what was working. You would think that this would be a no-brainer concept, and yet somehow it's not. I think the most egregious play call, however, was in the 4th quarter. The Packers were only down by 7 at this point, and keep in mind that they started the 4th quarter in a tie ball game, so there's still a whole lot of time here and it's still a close game. You're in 2nd down and 7, and if you're Mike McCarthy, situationally you really need to just focus on moving the chains here and working field position, because you absolutely do not want to give Brady the ball back with good field position to expand his lead with only 9 minutes left in the game. You want to run the ball or throw a quick high percentage pass or an RPO or something like that that can make 3rd down a bit easier and hopefully improve your odds of keeping this drive moving. So what does McCarthy actually call? A play action shot that results in a tough throw on a deep over route to a rookie wide receiver, which is not exactly a safe high percentage play. The ball is placed a bit behind Equanimeous St. Brown, it gets knocked away from him during the process of the catch, and now we're looking at a 3rd and 7 situation. And what do you know, on that ensuing 3rd and long, Rodgers is sacked because the Patriots could pin their ears back and rush the passer. A few plays later, New England opened up their lead to 14 points. I know that we could all easily say, oh, well, St. Brown was open, so this call should have worked, the throw was just in a tough spot for him to catch, but the point isn't that he was open. The point is that once again, in a pressure situation when you really need to sustain a drive, you're asking your quarterback to make a pinpoint perfect throw down the field to keep the game alive, when you could just instead make things easier on him by running the ball against a light box or calling a high percentage pass that can more safely move the chains. It does not have to be this hard. You do not have to force Rodgers into making these kinds of throws on every possession. Yes, we all know he can do it, but if you don't have to do it, why take the risk? Why put everything on your quarterback's shoulders in a non-desperate situation, only to then make his situation desperate by doing so? Do you think that the Patriots take that kind of chance on this play if they were down 7 and they were playing the clock and field position game? Hell no, and that's the difference between a team that compliments their quarterback and one that just jumps on his back. It's truly maddening to watch, and in a way, I almost feel bad for Rodgers for being put in these situations game after game. And another thing we have to consider, and this brings me to my next point, is that when either Mike McCarthy is calling for a deep shot downfield, or Rodgers changes the play himself to a deep shot, which he does do as well, they're not just relying on Rodgers to be perfect, but they're relying on those young receivers to be perfect as well. They need to be able to make tough catches through contact, 20, 30, 40 yards downfield, where they're also adjusting to a ball in the wind and in the lights. They've got to be able to fight through a helmet or an arm hitting their hands, and they have to be able to properly time their drift outside on a fade so that they can properly run under the ball at the boundary. A lot of these young wideouts, and most of this Packers receiving core is extremely young, these kids can't really do that stuff consistently yet. They don't have these mid-route adjustments mastered. They don't track the ball as well as veterans. They don't have the same kind of chemistry and timing that you used to see with, say, prime Jordy Nelson or Donald Driver, or now Davante Adams, who's been around for a little while. I mean, hell, Adams is easily a top 10 receiver in the league, and yet Packers fans hated his guts in his first 2 years on the team because he went through all the same issues that these young receivers are going through now. Drops, running routes improperly, missed blocking assignments, you name it, he's been through it, and he has really, really come a long way. This is not an easy offense for young receivers to learn, and believe me, they are learning on the fly. So when McCarthy and Rodgers are asking these kids to step up and make the same kinds of plays that Nelson and Cobb and Driver and Jennings and Adams all made or make now, the results will not be the same, and they need to adjust to that. They have to alter their approach in the passing game to compensate for a very inexperienced receiving core, especially when the few veterans that they do have are struggling to stay healthy. And after enough drops and enough mistakes from these receivers, you could tell in that Patriots game that it really affected Rodgers' confidence in them to help him out. And that's my third main observation about the struggles of this team. When McCarthy gets aggressive in his play calling and the receivers do not help to pay off that aggression, Rodgers' decision-making takes a hit because he does not trust his guys to come through for him. I'll give you an example. It's in the second quarter, 2nd down and 3 yards to go, the perfect down to get aggressive, and one of the few times when Rodgers really should be trying to land a knockout blow, but he just did not want to pull the trigger on it at all. The Patriots are in a zone defense here. It's a cover 4, some call it a quarters coverage, and I know it doesn't look like a normal cover 4 because this safety is down here playing his responsibility with a little bit more aggression than you're used to seeing, and he's trying to match up with that route from Jimmy Graham early, but he's doing that because he just doesn't want to get boxed out over the middle without even attempting to jam him up, so it still is in fact a quarters coverage, trust me on that. Now, the route concept that the Packers are running here is called a Mills concept, which is ironically enough a cover 4 killer, and the magic behind a Mills concept is this post-dig combination on the front side of the play. The dig route from Graham will almost always draw this safety inside and force him to come down and match it over the middle, which as I said he is doing very aggressively, and that means this corner here out on the boundary has nobody inside to help him out against this deep post from Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's playing it with outside leverage like any other corner would do in a bail to a zone, but when you're playing a zone with outside leverage, any route that stems inside will automatically be much harder to defend because you're in a huge disadvantage positioning wise. So with that safety coming down on the dig inside, there is nobody to help bracket that post. And against cover 4, if you don't have anything to bracket a post from the number 1 receiver outside, that is a touchdown 10 out of 10 times. This route concept is designed to destroy this coverage. That is its main purpose, to torch cover 4, and the Patriots just gave Aaron Rodgers cover 4. So what does Rodgers do with Valdes-Scantling sitting there on the post, perfectly leveraged to the inside of the DB, and waiting for a ball to be placed high and inside where only he can get it? Well, unfortunately for your fantasy teams, Aaron ignores it. For whatever reason, Rodgers completely disowns the existence of his young receiver running the perfect route to beat this specific coverage, and instead he checks it down to the reliable veteran Davante Adams for 10 yards and an easy first down. And I know what you're thinking. Brett, you are all over the place with your arguments. First you're saying that Rodgers isn't taking the easy throws, then he takes an easy throw and you kill him for it, but you have to understand it's all about context. If you're in a 2nd down and a short yardage situation well inside a field goal range, there are almost no consequences for being aggressive in this situation, because if you miss the throw, you still have a short yardage 3rd down that you can convert, and if you don't convert, you can still at least get a field goal. But if you make the throw, you can get a touchdown instead of a potential field goal, which is a 4-point swing. It's all about situational awareness, situational play calling, and situational execution. The Patriots are masters of all 3 of those things, and for whatever reason the Packers this year are not. We've seen Rodgers make this exact throw 1,000 times. We know he can do it and do it extremely well. But right now he is getting way too aggressive when he doesn't need to be, and not aggressive enough when he does need to be. Everything about this team is ass backwards right now, and honestly, it's extremely confusing because I've never seen this out of Rodgers before. This is not how he plays, and yet here we are. It's not just that he's making bad decisions, he's making bad throws. He's putting screen passes in the dirt. He's putting balls too far behind his receivers in the end zone and making their catches unnecessarily difficult. Something, and by something I mean a lot of things, are just off. I can't explain it, but I really wish that I could. Rodgers is performing far below his usual standards, and speaking of disappointments, by the way, his offensive line, which as I mentioned before is my next gripe about this team, is performing far below their usual standards as well. I mean, injuries or not, they are just incapable of protecting Rodgers, which is only making Aaron's problems worse. And their performance is particularly weird because they are ranked 4th in run blocking by DVOA, but 17th in pass protection. So when McCarthy is dialing up all these long developing passing plays, he is doing so with a below average pass protecting line and a quarterback who is already playing through an injury. And while calling those shot plays, he is making very little effort to utilize formations that spread defenses out or motions from his receivers to expose and identify blitz packages. So Rodgers is just sitting there with no clear or defined picture of the defense, and these front sevens are absolutely teeing off on him. It's the exact opposite mindset and play design that you see in literally any other modern offense these days, whether it's the Chiefs, the Rams, the Eagles, the Patriots, the Texans, the Steelers, you name it. I mean, the disconnect between play calling, personnel strengths, personnel weaknesses, it's like nothing makes sense anymore. It's like no effort was even made to remotely adjust how this offense operates, despite their youth at the skill positions, despite their injured quarterback, and despite their bad pass protection. And that lack of effort to change really smacks you in the face when they're going up against a team that has Cordero Patterson running freaking ISO behind a fullback for 5.5 yards per carry, while James White is leading the team in catches. It's complete ridiculousness. One team adjusts their offense to their situation and the other does not. And believe me, a 2-possession win was not reflective of just how much better prepared the Patriots were than the Packers. I am so unbelievably frustrated watching this team because even though yes, Aaron Rodgers is talented enough to put this team on his back and carry them to wins all by himself, even he is capable of making mistakes. He made plenty of them against New England, but a good football team should complement their quarterback enough to make up for those mistakes. It should not be one guy playing against 22 on the other side. And as much as we like to pretend it's always been that way for Tom Brady, it really hasn't. Even when Brady has had a bunch of nobodies in his receiving core, their offense has always been structured in a way to help those nobodies help their quarterback, not the other way around. The Packers don't do that. It's like they're deliberately tying weights to Rodgers' legs and throwing him in the ocean and saying, "Okay, Aaron, go swim to shore." It's absolute insanity because it does not have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this difficult. I believe this team can still be great. I believe this offense can still be enormously productive. And I believe that Aaron Rodgers can still play at an MVP level because at the end of the day, there's not one major insurmountable problem that is holding him back. It's just a whole bunch of little ones. They need Mike McCarthy to actually run the ball with Aaron Jones more than 9 times a game. They need to use more spread concepts and more motions to keep defenses honest in their alignments before the snap. They need to emphasize the quick passing game and help out their porous offensive line, and to get their young receivers in a confident rhythm early in the game. But most importantly, they need to just commit to one overall philosophy that I don't think they've ever actually tried before. Make things easy. The Packers have done it the hard way for so many years now, and for the most part, it has gotten them nowhere. In fact, it's a testament to Aaron Rodgers' greatness that they've even been to 3 NFC Championship games and won a Super Bowl in that time, because they sure as hell would not have even gotten close without him. And I don't want to hear excuses about their below 500 record either, saying, "Oh, well, we would have beat the Vikings if it weren't for that bad call against Clay," or "We would have beat the Rams if Ty Montgomery didn't fumble," or "We would have had a shot against New England if they didn't bust out those trick plays." Bullshit. None of those games needed to be that difficult or that close, and deep down, Packer fans, you know that. Hell, deep down, Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers know that too. This team may be below 500, and they're trying to stay alive for the playoffs, but they could be so much better if they just allowed themselves to be. I can only pray that in the second half of the season, they finally realize their mistakes, they finally stop forcing Aaron Rodgers to carry the whole team by himself, and for once, hopefully, finally, they just make things easy. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. You guys have been so incredibly supportive of me every single week for like the last, almost 2 years now, helping me to make this channel a success. It's been truly incredible, and our season-long sponsor, MyBookie, has been extraordinarily supportive as well, so I want to shout them out too. I wouldn't be able to do this for a living without any of you or without them basically paying my rent, so they've been fantastic for me. And they, of course, if you want to maybe show a little appreciation their way, they, of course, still do have a fantastic offer available for all of you guys that watch this show every week. If you want to bet on NFL or NBA or NHL games, any other sporting event, even esports events or politics, you can bet on literally anything you can think of on MyBookie. You can get up to a 100% sign-up bonus on any deposits of up to $1,000, which is gigantic compared to most other sign-up bonuses. So if you guys were already planning on betting on those games anyway, that bonus basically just gives you free money for what you're going to do no matter what. So it's kind of awesome like that. Again, that link is in the description below. Just enter promo code Brett to claim your bonus, whatever it may be. Good luck this weekend on your bets. Also, I did put out a video yesterday, I believe, talking about some of my picks against the spread, so you can check those out. We'll see how I do on those. I've done decent so far this year, I feel like. I'll be back next week with another full film room episode on a topic yet to be determined. I still have a lot of options, and I haven't decided yet, so drop some suggestions in the comments below. That's where I got this episode's idea from, after all, so make sure to do that, and I will see you guys in a few days. Until then, later.